I'd like to start everyone off with a question. I want to ask, what was the first memorable time you spent an extended period of time in nature? And I'm going to define that as longer than 1 day and 1 night. So for me, the first one that I can remember was when I was 8 years old. I went out to the Black Rock Desert in Nevada with my father. And the place where we were staying was about 80 miles from the nearest town, and we were the only 2 people out in that area. And we stayed in a small 2-man tent on an abandoned World War II runway that was used for emergency landings. And it was absolutely awe-inspiring. There was no one but the 2 of us. And there was something so powerful about it. And even as an 8-year-old, I felt connected with something greater, something more powerful. And I had not developed any spiritual beliefs because I was an 8-year-old. But I felt still that connection that I would later come to know in my faith. And today I'll be talking about this inherent value that we find in nature. Hello, my name is Ryan Duffy, and today I'll be talking about Why to Act, Finding Our Purpose in Nature. I read a novel by T.C. Boyle, and it's called A Friend of the Earth. This novel was written in the year 2000, and it takes place in the year 2025. What's so awesome about this novel is it predicts the major events that will happen. And the setting of this is a dystopian novel, which the world has been massively affected by the effects of climate change. And the author predicts large natural disasters such as Hurricane Katrina and massive wildfires that would devastate the West Coast. And there's something so amazing about this book and how accurate it is, and really to show it in fiction and how close we are. We're only 6 years away from this when it actually takes place now, from the time that it was written. And it follows this man named Tyrone. And him and his family are very passionate about the environment, and they're becoming fed up with this misuse of the Earth's resources and the land. And so they decide to take action. And in this quote it says, they were being used to intimidate people like Tyrone Tidewater and his family and his wife and daughter. That is, anyone who got in the way in the process of meeting the plunder of national forests. And what this is talking about is, they went out to protest the government reclaiming a national park, much like one of the ones that I went and spent my 3 weeks in. And they were fed up with this, and the government used force to intervene and to scare them off so that people would not continue doing this. And what happened was the government ended up meeting in them. We may say, well, this is fiction, this is not reality, the government actually do this. But what I want to remind you is just to look back 40 or 50 years ago, and we see the Kent State protests, where college students were protesting the Vietnam War peacefully, and the government fired into the crowd, killing a couple of students. So this is nothing new to us. And this begs the question for me, what gives us this value? What makes people so willing to care about this? And so I read a biography called Into the Wild by John Krakauer. And this follows the life of a man named Christopher McCandless. And this man's life is super fascinating. He grows up in a very prosperous household, and we would consider that he has everything that we would want in our modern life. His father was an engineer for NASA, he was very intelligent, he had a very loving family, and a very wealthy family who was willing to pay for his education. He just graduated from the University of North Carolina, a very prestigious university, and he was about to attend law school. And his grandparents had left him a large sum of money in order to pay for his law school. But one day, he felt that it just wasn't enough, and he donated all of the money that he had left to him to charity, and he hitchhiked his way to Alaska. And while he was in Alaska, he lived off the land. He lived off nothing but the land and the very rudimentary supplies that he had with him. And I think there's something so beautiful about this. We considered him to have everything, but yet it still wasn't enough. There's something greater, a greater connection that we long for. It's part of our human spirit. And Christopher McCandless says this so beautifully himself. He says, the very basic core of man's living spirit is his passion for adventure. The joy of life comes from our encounters with new experiences, and hence there is no greater joy than having an endlessly changing horizon, for each day to have a new and different sun. And I just want you to think about how beautiful this is. And it's really true to who we are as a species. We really long to be a part, to have an adventure, to go out and explore. And I think what this gets at is where we've come from. We have to look back. For tens of thousands of years as a species, we've been a very active, nomadic species. And we have been moving around, always changing our horizon. But until recently, with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution and other advances in technology, we've become very static, and we're not moving around much. We spend most of our days sitting down. We wake up out of bed. We sit in a car. We drive to work or school. We sit all for 8 hours at work or school, and then we get back in our car and sit down. There's not a lot of movement left in our lives, and we don't experience many new things. Many of us won't go out of the realm of our houses and where we work for the rest of the week. And so what I wanted to look into is what is driving this disconnect. If we know that we are so entwined with nature and where we've come from, why are we disconnected from it? And so I read a scholarly journal called More Kids in the Woods, Reconnecting Americans with Nature. And this journal has fascinated me with some of the numbers that it put out. It showed that in 1900, when conservation was in its infancy, there were more than 76 million Americans, 60% of whom lived in rural areas. And what this really means is 60% of Americans relied on nature, on the earth, for their immediate livelihood. Their quality of life depended on how they cared for and took care of their surroundings and their environment. But now we fast forward to the 21st century, just a mere 119 years later from when this data was taken, and we see that there are more than 300 million Americans, an overwhelming majority, 80% of whom live in metropolitan areas, with fewer connections to rural areas now than ever. And so what this means is 80% of Americans don't have their livelihood dependent on nature and on the earth. And so what this leads to is this false thought that it's not important to us, and it's being dismissed as no longer necessary for our lives. We've progressed past this. We're a more advanced species, and civilization no longer needs this, but nothing is further from the truth. I just wanted to go into some of the benefits of spending time in nature. We've seen mental health has been a really large issue in our current day and age, and spending times in green and open spaces has shown to decrease levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. And that is not to say that going outside is the be-all, end-all cure to mental health. That is nothing but the truth, further from the truth. But it is a good first step, and it can be a very good coping mechanism and help. And so what I want to do for everyone is I want to leave everyone with a challenge. I would like everyone to challenge themselves to go outside, go ride a bike, go on a run, go on a jog, go on a hike. Find somewhere and spend some time with your thoughts. I know as myself, I'm a fairly reserved person, and so I really need time to go over my thoughts, and I learned so much about myself and about my faith, and that's where I really cultivated my natural spirituality, was spending time with myself and God. In nature, I realized there is something greater. There is a God that created all this so beautifully. And what I want to challenge you to do is I'm going to leave you with a quote, and to think about what I've just told you. And my last quote is, "We're all dying, every moment of every day. That is the inescapable truth of this existence. It's the truth that can paralyze us with fear, or one that can energize us with impatience. With the desire to explore and experience, with the hope and the iron will to find memory in every action, to be alive, under sunshine or starlight, in weather fair or stormy. To dance with every step, be they through gardens of flowers or through deep snows." Thank you.